I'm David Batstone. I'm the founder and managing partner of Just Business, which is an investment company that looks strategically to make investments and grow companies that can change the world. I'd say I have a fairly unusual career path. I was working as a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, particularly in areas around digital media. And one day I discovered that my favorite restaurant in the San Francisco Bay Area was the center of a human trafficking ring that brought hundreds of teenagers from the area of Bangalore, India, into the United States for the purpose of forced labor. It was a real shock. And so I decided to go around the world and investigate this. Took a year leave of absence from my investment firm, also my university. I'm a professor. And I pursued this. I went to find out how this could happen in the world. I followed the money. And I went to every continent, and I discovered that human trafficking, the taking of people's freedom and making them to work and not being able to leave and not getting paid in any real terms. So modern slavery. Now, the funny thing is, along the way, is that I felt I want to do something about it. And I like to say I almost like opened my heart and shut down my brain. And what I mean by that is I created models to address a problem like human trafficking, but you could extend this to global warming or HIV/AIDS or extreme poverty, whatever that social or environmental cause we care about. Even though we know that the models that we use around charity and around nonprofits, we'd never use in the world of business, we'd never use in the world of digital technology, we somehow think magically they're going to scale or they're going to be effective in the world of nonprofit and charity. So I did what everybody else did. I started a nonprofit. And for 5 years, not for sale, my nonprofit fought human trafficking in a very conventional way. I'd ask for a donation, and I'd take that and spend it, build a service that would drain more money, so I needed to grow that money that I was asking for. So a donation model that spent the money, at the end of the year, you'd be bankrupt, so you'd have to start again. And I decided, something's wrong with this model. Why don't I try to use the methods and what I know builds scalable, effective companies in the for-profit sector? What if I applied that to the nonprofit sector? So instead of donations, I look for capital. Instead of volunteers, I look for really top talent. And I look for really great technology, not secondhand computers. What if I brought that to bear on the issues I care about to bring about a world of dignity for people and planet? And essentially that's what I did. I started with one company and I built 10 companies now. And all of those companies, built into the DNA of the company, is the model for changing the world that I want to see. The kind of dignity for people in the way that production is done, the way that the planet is treated, and the way that we relate sustainably to the environment. And also, I'm creating revenue back for the nonprofit causes I care about. So in essence, I tried to recreate not only the business model of how we do a business, but also how we do a charity. And they're hybrid models. We really live at times where the stakes are high, around the future of our planet, around the air we breathe, around the water we drink, around the nature we love to be a part of, and the kind of lifestyle that we want for our happiness and fulfillment. So high stakes around people's future of work and how they see their purpose and how they see meaningful activity that they can reward themselves and the people in their community for the work that they do. So for me, it's a really critical time because the pathway we've been on, let's not look back and necessarily try and find fault or blame, but it won't work in the future. So I always look forward rather than trying to dissect who's to blame for the past, because we have choices and we have a pathway and we can learn from whatever mistakes or successes we've had in the past. But make no mistake, the choices that we're making today is shaping our future. And they're critical choices around education, access to education, capital. We live in a world where, so many people, 90% of the population don't really have access to capital to grow their dreams. How does that change? How do we change our finance systems to include people? And this is what the great challenge for young people is. They can create that future. They can take their skills and bring them to bear for the majority of humanity, not a 1% who get all the privileges and benefits of what an economy is today. There was one point where I tried to convince business leaders to just be better people, to be better citizens, to be more responsible. And the response of companies to my kind of request were to create a department called corporate social responsibility, or an ethics department. Those departments tended to be in the basement in the left corner. They didn't have a seat at executive tables. They didn't have the opportunity to really inform and shape the decisions that are strategic for a company. I think that changes in the 21st century. In the 21st century, we're aware of scarcity of resources. Our planet just can't sustain the kind of production and consumption that we've come accustomed to. We also see transparency is completely different today than it was 10, 20 years ago. And changing consumer expectations among a younger generation, a millennial and a Z generation. And then people like myself who look at the world like a younger person and say, we just can't keep living the way we used to. So I think what's changed is now, to be competitive, you almost have to take into account what's your impact on the communities where you operate, the people you're going to hire, the environment that you're going to be conditional upon for the success of your company. You have to recreate a different business model. So I don't create social businesses. I don't create B corporations. I create 21st century companies. And I think to be competitive, everyone has to look toward the future and how they can build those companies. Otherwise, you're so 20th century and late. Creating structures that are more responsible and respond to dignity for people and planet really requires us to experiment quite a bit around the capital structure of how we, even get money and investment to start a company. And then the entrepreneurs and how we compensate and incentivize them. And the people who work for us, that they have a sense of purpose and meaning. So it requires an amazing amount of experimentation. I hate to tell people there's no silver bullet. In my own companies, I'm really experimenting with different business models. One business model is a series of restaurants in Amsterdam that is owned by my nonprofit. We raise all the capital. All the benefits or proceeds, the net profit comes back for us to reinvest, starting other restaurants, having a culinary school for people at risk in the commercial sex industry. So we have caterers and chefs who one time were, selling their body. Now they're making great meals at a high-end restaurant. So that's from a nonprofit. Another model with my beverage company, Rebel, is a venture model. Bringing in like-minded investors and really choosing carefully the investors who will be patient with their capital and urgent with their values. So in everything in between, one company I started and I own the whole thing. So I really want to experiment. How can, the models by which we structure a company, driven by money, because capital really does inform and shape how the company develops. So what are those models? And maybe it's not one answer. Maybe in this condition, or in this case, the vehicle will get me where I need to go is a different model from one that I might choose in another area. But I guess it's seeing capital and talent and technology as tools that enable you to get to where you need to go. But the values drive it, not the return on investment or the technology itself. Right? So I guess, it sounds old and antiquated, but let's let our values be our moral compass. But we've lost that sense. And I suppose it's an articulation of what's your purpose, stating it publicly and transparently, and then what are the measurements by which we can tell whether or not you're actually living by those values. And then I, as a consumer, or I, as a affiliate business, then I will participate in your mission. I will participate in your company if I believe that those values align. Now, that requires a conscious business leader. It requires entrepreneurs who care for the world. And I'm a part of a movement of people who really want to invest in that future. 21st century leaders, and certainly the McGowan Fellows are considered 21st century leaders. And they have a different demand upon them. It's not a set of skills that stay stagnant. It almost is a appreciation for the fact I need to get smarter. I need to be more agile, and I need to be learning on my feet in a constant pace. The world changes so quickly. I look at food. Just take food. Food is going to change dramatically in the next decade. The way we produce it, the kind of products we have, the demand for new food, the experimentation is going to reinvent how we look at the food industry, the healthcare industry, transportation. What I say to my students at the University of San Francisco is that the world is in transition, and you're lucky to be a part of shaping that future as leaders. So what does that require? One is every week you need to feel like you're getting smarter. Do you feel like you're smarter this week than last week? So glad I didn't do this interview a week ago because I'm smarter this week, right? So for me, it's that intelligence that's growing. It's also the willingness and the ability to be bold, because the mistake today is the success tomorrow. So set up hypotheses and set up experiments that allow you to fail on a regular basis. Not trying to ensure your success or always have a win, but look at your idea, test your idea, fail with your idea, and make a better idea. That's what the 21st century requires of leaders. And that then takes a sense of what I call proactive humility or aggressive humility, that you're proactive, knowing that you have confidence to solve a problem, to develop a mission for your company or a new product or service, but you have the humility to say, I was wrong yesterday, and we can improve it to do better. So an attitude of proactive humility and intelligence that's eclectic and quickly changing. And then finally, it's being able to have a leadership where you're empowering others around you rather than feeling that the leader makes all the decisions. That I always puzzles me why leaders are trying to control all the decision making or power, because they look better when they empower others to lift the mission, because they're the orchestra leader. So it's a different kind of leadership than we would have required in the 20th century. Trust is in a crisis for our government leaders and for our business leaders and our community at large. And probably it's the number one foundation upon building a future together, is to regain the trust of the people who work for us, the people who buy from us, people who invest in us. And for me, it comes from an articulation of what I'm going to do that's authentic. People sense the authenticity because then they see the actions that follow from that articulation. And then they measure it, and we share where we fall short and where we succeed in those objectives or in those dreams. I'll give an example. I have a company called Z Shoes. Z Shoes Organic. What we say to you is that the way that we make shoes today is not viable for the future of the world. We want to make a shoe that it has the capacity to be regenerative. It can be regenerative. It can go back into the earth. Every other shoe I have in my closet, frankly, today will be in a toxic dump in 3 generations. So when I articulate that, I'll say, look, this is where my shoe today is regenerative. This is where it is biodegradable. We use glue. We haven't figured out a way to do that yet. Now we're trying leather. We're trying to get leather substitutes, but this is what, that we're really straightforward and honest about. Here's our vision and our dream. Here's where we are succeeding, and here's where we're falling short. So for me, then the public gets a sense, okay, I'm a part of the story that they're sharing. It feels real to me. I think those are the companies that'll be successful, because those are the narratives that create trust. And trust is going to be one of the most important elements of social capital as we move through the 21st century. The only reason that I can sit here, being a professor at a university, the head of an investment firm, is because there were generations before me. My grandfather, who worked in a coal mine, my father, who emigrated to this country and built a life here, and really, I'm the privileged benefactor of that journey, of that struggle. All of us come from a story of struggle. Just look a few chapters back in your biography, and so how can we give other people the opportunity to write the story of their lives in a meaningful way? How can we give them a pen so that the story they write is their own story and not being written for them? And this is the privilege of having gone through that place where I've arrived to a chapter where I can write my own story. Let me help others get there too. So it's putting your own life in perspective. It's like, read your own story, now share that with others. Read the benefits and gifts that you have and give them out to others so that they too can sit in front of a university, in front of an investment firm, and one day change the world that they want to see destined. Future leaders need to understand what their purpose is. Making money is not enough. Gaining status is not enough, because they can look at the traditions of people who come before them, and religious traditions and political traditions, and they see that, it's not fulfilling. And so what I say to my students is, look, you have the great opportunity to live a meaningful life. That's a privilege. That's a benefit from where we've come from. Choose that wisely. Don't throw that away as a pearl to swine, but actually use that opportunity to create a significant life of substance. And don't make that mistake in the 21st century.